everyone, to Debating Metal. I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, along with my illustrious co host, Chris K. In the desire to create new content, Chris and I are always thinking of new things to talk about for you, our listeners. The latest of these new ideas is the blind listen.
You know how sometimes you hear an album or see a movie you want to talk about, but nobody around you knows what you're talking about? It can be pretty frustrating, and it's human nature to want to share in experiences we enjoy. And if you're listening, I'm guessing you enjoy metal. There are times that Kenneth and I talk about albums we love, but the other doesn't know what we're we're talking about. So for these episodes, we're picking an album we know and the other is unfamiliar with, and we're reviewing each other's pick. It'll be pretty interesting to see how we feel about these albums we've never heard until now.
So, with that said, sit back, relax, turn it up to 11, and let the debate begin. Chris, the blind listen. So you brought this idea to me, the blind listen, and I really thought it was a cool idea because, like you just said, there's so many times where you want to talk to somebody about something and they don't know shit about what you're talking about, you know, and it's like the whole reason we started this show is because you and I got to talk about metal. We got to talk about the stuff that we enjoy on a regular basis. And so now, you have taught me so many things about certain albums and bands, and I've taught you a few things. So now this is a chance for us to really dig deep and show really some stuff that maybe we never talked about. And I would say what you've given me, we've never talked about, like never.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, likewise. As I was listening to the album you gave me, I kind of realized I've never really even listened to the band. I mean, I've heard here and there, but it's like I it didn't connect to anything in particular as far as like you hear a band or something and you go, "Oh, I know this
Yeah,
stuff,"
yeah, yeah.
and
That was Led
it's just
Zeppelin for me the entire 80s.
oh wow. So it's like one of those things where this was interesting, and you're right. Like this is one of the reasons we do this is because we want to like we love talking about music, and so sharing those albums that we both love, but maybe the other one doesn't know, or hopefully some of you guys out there listening don't necessarily know these as well. And if you do, then that's cool too. But like, maybe it gives you a new band that you can listen to or something. So I think it's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it's funny because it reminds me of back in the day when I used to, like we talked about in one of our most recent episodes, where I went into the record store and I discovered Halloween. Um, so it's like that where I would go to a friend's house, like one of the bands we're going to talk about, and we'll introduce them in a few minutes. I went to this neighbor's house, and I say neighbor, but it was like 6 blocks away and around the corner. Um, he he was an artist, and he drew on the backs of jackets. That was the thing back in the early 80s, and he had a very unique style, very similar to how um, um, Derek Riggs for Iron Maiden, when he made all those, the Eddie is his own style. That is a particular style. Like Pushead has his style, right? So this
Hmm.
guy had a really cool way of his art. But he would take a picture or like a photograph that he saw in a magazine of an artist, and he would basically paint that picture, but in his style. So it was really, really neat. And he would put that on the back of Jack, sell them for like 100, $150, and be done with it.
That's
So
pretty cool.
yeah. And I would like every so often I'd go to his house, and he's like, "Hey man, have you heard this? Have you heard this? Have you heard this?" Because he was a little older than me, And I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" And this is how I got turned on to one of the albums that we're going to talk about tonight. So without further ado, um, let's talk about the albums that we have chosen for each other. Um, since you kind of were alluding to it, I'll talk about the one. I'll mention it real quick. The one I chose for you, I chose Lizzie Borden, their debut album, or actually, yeah, debut full length album, "Love You to Pieces," and you chose for me.
I chose an album called Nosferatu by a band that I'm very familiar with that I don't believe you've ever listened to, Bloodbound.
No, and it was funny because you. So this is how uh, unknowing of this band I was. Okay, you sent me a text message and say, "Here's your album. It's Bloodbound, Nosferatu," and I read that as Bloodhound. I literally read that as Bloodhound, and so I'm typing up Bloodhound, like, I can't find shit on this, right? But here's the funny thing, so I typed Bloodhound, I forgot what search it was, I put Bloodhound Nosferatu, and it converted it to Bloodbound Nosferatu.
Ah, okay.
So I'm like, "Oh, cool, okay, it found it," right? But it didn't click that it had changed the H to a B.
Ah,
So for the longest time, I'm like, "What is this Bloodbound thing I came across?" It was so strange for me.
that's pretty funny.
It's pretty funny.
Well, I
Um,
kept looking up stuff, and all I could find is some girl that chopped up her parents.
were you putting IE?
No, I'm just
Oh.
kidding.
Oh, okay.
I thought you wanted me to watch some snuff film.
Oh,
Uh,
Jesus Christ.
no,
I think you clicked on the wrong link, my friend. All right. So, so the concept is you wanted me to basically, without ever having heard this album, you wanted me, or and me, you,
and
to
you
listen.
listeners out there,
And you listeners out there, you could do the same thing. You could play along at home. Listen to for the first time this album. Now, um, for me, I'm looking at so there's lots of things to take in. There's the album cover. You always look at the album cover. Unfortunately, in this particular case, I can only see like a tiny little thumbnail. Um, because that's just the way phones are. They're small. um, and so I look at the cover and I'm like, well, this is an interesting cover. I can only assume that the music is a certain way. I did zero research on Bloodbound before I listened, so
ah,
it was 100% blind. Like I literally, I opened up Spotify on my way to work one morning. I put in Bloodbound Nosferatu or Bloodhound Nosferatu. It found the album somehow, and I literally clicked play on the first song. Didn't do any research. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know where they were from. I didn't know what year the album came out. Nothing. And I listened to it. So what you're going to listen to, or how I'm going to speak about this album, is 100% straight up first time listening.
it's like full gut reaction.
Yes, full gut reaction. So so for you guys listening out there, so the Bloodbound, so what I discovered is a Swedish power metal band. And there's four people in the band. I think at the time this
At the
was
time,
this is their debut album. So they have vocalist Urban Breed, they got guitar player Tomas Olsen, bass player and keyboard player Frederick Berg, uh, and Oscar Berlin on drums, or yeah, I guess I would say Berlin. So those are the four players that are on the album, or supposedly. I have questions about that in a few minutes. um, Mark Wilkinson was the guy who did the album cover. Now, for some people out there who follow credits and stuff like that, you'll know that Mark Wilkinson is the guy who's done the last couple of Iron Maiden album covers, as well as all the Judas Priest album covers from Ram It Down to now, except for Demolition. That's pretty. That's pretty interesting. He's been like Ram It Down, 1988. That's been a long time. He's been working with Judas Priest, and then there's a variety of other bands. Obviously, he did Bloodbound. So that's pretty cool. But so my initial thing, I see this thing. It's got this, devilish looking demonic figure on the cover with fire. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be pretty heavy shit that I'm listening to here. So, as I mentioned, it's power metal. Okay. Um, so let's start. First song, right? Behind the Moon. It's it was not what I was expecting. I tell you that right now, because I was expecting something way heavier, way more along the lines of melodic death metal. I got Swedish power metal. Nothing wrong with that at all. It was pretty cool. This first song has got a nice little chuggy riff on the intro. Uh, so when the vocals come in, the first thing I think about is it's got a very similar feel to Fear of the Dark from Iron Maiden, but it's not a copy. It's not an homage type of thing. But it's their own song, but there's this vibe that I instantly got off of it. That was this is Fear of the Dark, um, and then it kicks in with this gallop, and they're like, oh, first thing you hear, you think Iron Maiden. The gallop is really really cool. It's very Maiden-esque. Um, and another thing I noticed is the quality of the production. It's very good. It's very clear. But I have more information on that a little bit later. And then there's some really cool guitar harmonies after the chorus. So knowing that now that there's only one guitar player on this dude did a lot of work on this album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, because I'm assuming, I mean, it sounds like he double tracked everything and played leads with himself to harmonize. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff like that going on. So what do you think of my first assessment?
I mean, yeah, I think it's fairly accurate. Like I I didn't really get the no, I guess I do. Okay. So you're talking about when the vocals come in, that's where it kind of feels like
Yes,
um
Fear of the
Fear
Dark.
of the Dark. Yeah, because the initial riff does not, right?
No,
But
there's nothing musically.
yes. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, you mean there's nothing like instrumentally or
right,
instrumentally. Um,
right.
yeah, no, I get you. Okay, that's really interesting. I never really put that together, but it does make a lot of sense. Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely get the Iron Maiden vibe. That's one of the things that made me think like I think you'd enjoy this album because there is that vibe there. And like one thing that stuck out to me the other day. We were talking on either an episode or just talking, and you said something along the lines of you're not that big of a power metal guy. And I was thinking like what's a power metal album that I know because I know quite a bit more than you do um that I think you would like. And this was the one that came to mind.
Interesting. Okay,
So,
because you could have picked anything from Hammerfall, and I would have been like, okay. I heard obviously I know who the band is, but I really don't. I've listened to some cover songs of theirs. Um, and so I know that. I've literally listened to only cover songs from them. I mean, it was Man on the Silver Mountain. Um, I think we're gonna make it from Twisted Sister. And I forgot the other one is. Um, when I think of it, I'll let you know. But yeah, so you could have thrown any power metal at me, and I would have not known who it was.
yeah, but would you have liked it? We don't know.
Oh no! I mean, look, I got nothing against power metal. I really don't. There's, and we'll talk about it, as we progress on this album. There's a certain monotony that comes to me that comes with power metal.
Hmm.
Um, that this album does a good job of avoiding. By the way,
Yeah.
um, and so that's the one thing. Like if like Halloween, the first album, when I think back on listening to Keeper of the Seven Keys, I know that's not their first album, but when I listen to Keeper of the Seven Keys, there was a lot of just consistency in terms of the style of music, but there were some differences. Um, but as obviously as their career went on, they've had a very long career. They've changed a lot, and you've got to do that in order to
Yeah, some of Halloween's
progress.
changes were not great though.
No, I'm not saying they were good or bad. I'm just saying, like, for what it's worth, a lot of people talk about, oh, they wish that band would never change. They wish a
Yeah,
band would never change. But the way I see this is, I don't mind sharing my favorite band with the world, with the fans, right?
yeah.
So, like these guys, when we always joke about, Metallica sold out when they did Fade to Black, right? And then they literally got flack for it. They were told, how can you put acoustic guitars at the beginning of your album when they did Fight Fire with Fire?
Mhm.
Of course, as soon as it changed to electric guitar, I mean, it basically melted someone's face off. Um, but they got flack for that. But think about if Metallica never changed at all. So many people out there talk so much shit. Yeah, they suck after the first, the third album, whatever. After Justice, they were never the same. True, that
After
is absolutely
no
true.
Life Till Leather, they were never the
Oh, yeah,
same.
dude, there are people that say that, um, but if they don't change, if they don't grow, if any of these, Megadeth changed how many times? Um, if any of these bands never change, then you get put into a particular category. Look at Overkill. Overkill, for the most part, has never changed.
I think
There
they
was
have two careers in a way.
They
I
do,
think,
because there was that really down period in the 2000s, or late
yeah, they
2000s.
went to like kind of like a what do you call it? No, I'm thinking of the wrong word here. Um, their sound changed to more groove metal for a
Yes.
while.
Uh-huh. Yes. But they still had their vocals. But,
Yeah,
and that's the big thing for them. But, now they're probably thrashier than they ever have been. Same thing with
it's fair.
Testament. Testament, went through a variety of changes, but you think about, when you go to see a Testament concert, where are you going? You're going to this tiny club. You've got, maybe 1,000 people, Overkill. We went to see them where was it was at the house? No, it wasn't the House of Blues. It was,
Where
shit, where
did
did
we
we go?
see Overkill? Oh man, that was like a small club. That wasn't that one.
Was it the Warehouse? Yeah, it was Warehouse.
Was it?
I think so. Regardless, right?
I don't think it was. I think it was at that little bar that's out there. Man,
It was Scalp Bar?
it wasn't Scout Bar.
No, it wasn't.
It
I know it was a Scalp Bar.
it was. I'll look it up
I'm
while you're
looking it up
talking.
right now. I'm getting on the set list, and we're gonna check out the last few concerts we saw.
It was in 2020. It was Overkill Houston 2020. Uh, it was Warehouse Live.
Was right, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
So Warehouse Live, small place. I mean, couple thousand, maybe. Which is, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, dude, we've some of our best shows we've seen, like Overkill, were in those places. Those are
Yeah, we
great
were front
places.
row.
Yeah, those are great places to see the bands you love. However, you know, you can see it when you and then you tell me this, when you and I go to these shows, do you ever think about, man, this must be a tough life for these guys?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like you walk in, you come in off, you park in the parking lot, you're walking down the street, or you're walking across the parking lot, whatever, and you see the tour bus parked in front or parked on the side, right? And sometimes I've seen the guys come out of the bus and they say hi, and it's like, that's it. That's their life right there. That's where they're staying. There's no hotel. They're on their tour bus,
Mhm.
and they have to do this at the end of the night. Their crew of one or two guys and they probably help pack it in, load it up, and move on to the next show.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one hell of a life, but they do it because they love it, right? And I don't know, I don't think they get paid dramatically much. Like, to me, if they're getting $100,000 a year, that's a lot. I personally think.
I mean, yeah, the industry's obviously drastically different than what it used to be. Um, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing, or it just is, right? So it's definitely changed, right? Um, we know that you can't, in most instances, start a band and make the kind of money that metal bands were making in the 80s. That being said, uh, the ones that are truly passionate about it are the ones that are touring. It's in their blood. They can't not do those kind of things, right? So yeah, it's definitely different. And then there's the standouts that are in any genre that are going to make tons more money than others. There's rappers that are probably the same thing, where like in comparison to the big names, they just don't make nearly as much money because they got a small or play at smaller venues, or they just don't have the same fan base. But I think with metal, it's obviously that's a bigger thing, just because it's, I would say, since the 2000s, it's never been quite the same.
No, no, it hasn't. But the point that I was trying to get at is, like, when I say I like to share my the bands. It's like, without change, Metallica wouldn't be where they're at.
Yeah.
Without change, Aerosmith would not have had the second career that they have had. You know, when I look at, I think about a band like that, where they were dead in the water in 1982. I
Hmm.
mean, dead in the water. And Joe Perry came back. They decide to give it another shot. They try to come clean, and they come up with "Let the Music Do the Talking." It was a start. It wasn't the best start, but it was a start. They had, and then they came out with "Permanent Vacation," and shit blew up from there. Luckily, they were able to keep it together for the rest of their career. You know,
Yeah.
Iron
I mean,
Maiden.
I saw them in their career renaissance. I
Exactly.
didn't
So did
see
I.
them before. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw them on the what's that? The I was going to say the album with the cow on the front.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
so I was going to say the album with the pierced nipples.
yeah.
So
I was gonna say Mother's Milk, but that's
it's a Red Hot
that's
Chili Peppers.
completely wrong. Yeah.
But so I was going to sit there and say the album with the pierced nipple, or the with the nipples on it, right? But um, if you don't have the CD, you don't know that the CD had one nipple from each of the five guys on the little label. It was the weirdest thing when you open that CD and boom, there's five nipples staring at you.
Oh
It
God.
was so
Five
fucking
five
odd.
dude nipples too. Ugh.
Yes, yeah, they weren't covered. Anyway,
It's
uh,
funny. You're like, ooh, guy nipples, but then you're like, let's watch wrestling.
yeah, right. All right, so moving on to the next song. All right, so song number two is a song called "Into the Dark." Um, it's got a harmony style guitar intro. That's what I recognized, and then it changes to a really pretty cool guitar riff. Um, and then it goes into the song from there. I mean, it's hard to really describe the song. You got to listen to it to really understand it. It's a power metal song, but it's a really good song. Um, it's not a bad second song on the album. It's got a really good pre-chorus chorus melody. Um, in my opinion, however, that chorus melody thing, um, it's just too long, and it's like, it sounds really nice. It's got this nice melody. It starts off the first line of the chorus, and it literally drags on. It's almost like two verses long. This chorus, and I'm like, okay, you got this harmony, you got this nice gang vocal type thing. It's it's layered, sounds great, but man, it's going on for a while till you get to the point of the chorus. So it's not a bad song. It's just that was just a nitpicky type of thing. When I do these things, I get a little nitpicky because I have to.
Interesting. I mean, it's kind of a power metal thing. And so I know what you're talking about where it's this song builds a lot in different places. And even the beginning starts off as kind of like a slow build into the main riff and everything. And so that is kind of like a power metal thing because in concept, power metal is usually about like overcoming odds or riding a dragon or some shit like that. Where it's like, there it's you can put a power metal album on and go to the gym and be like, yeah, I'm gonna lift 1,000 pounds. Like that's just kind of like that's the feeling that you get when you listen to a lot of this stuff. And if you're into, epic tales and things like that, then that may apply to you, right? So, I get what you're saying. That never really bothered me, but I think like, this is a cool interim song between two better songs to me. So,
Yes, and speaking of better song, Nosferatu, the title track, excellent song. I really do like it. It begins with some thunder, some church bells, go off four times before the music begins, and then the intro starts. And again, I get that Iron Maiden esque vibe, um, and it definitely. So I get this. So the quiet passage, how when Fear of the Dark starts, it starts loud and then it kind of quiets down, and
hmm
it goes into the vocals where Bruce is talking about what he's afraid of. So this has that vibe to me, or even and musically, and I'm not going to say it's copying because it just this is just one of those instant things. It brings you to another place or to another song. I get these notes that have a sound similar to Time Machine off of Senjutsu from Iron Maiden. So that was what I was getting. And I'm like, not in no way, shape, or form are they copying anything Iron Maiden did.
well,
Well,
Senjutsu is like years later.
no, I know that, but I'm just saying, right, exactly. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying that like the way he's the notes that he's using and the way he's picking has a vibe that's very similar to me to Time Machine or Fear of the Dark. Time Machine,
Mm,
obviously, yeah, came 20 years later, but it's just the way it sounds to me. Um,
gotcha.
and again, like I said, nothing wrong with that. I'd never looked at it as they're copying Iron Maiden because they're not. But you can obviously tell that they're inspired by them. That there's no doubt about it. Once that part is of the song is over, it goes straight into another Iron Maiden gallop. The chorus on Nosferatu is really cool. I really dig this song a lot. So much so I put it on my playlist.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really cool track. Like I think it's the first one I heard off of this album, and I think what would really you nailed it on the head. Like there's that Iron Maiden gallop, there's the build up, but it also we were actually just talking about Nosferatu the other day, the film.
Right.
I actually have a copy of it, and if you've ever watched it or if you haven't watched it, the it's an oddity, and that's the best way I can put it. There's some really cool imagery, and I think the song captures some of that, like in concept. But also, what's interesting to me is when you first watch that movie, it's based on the tale of Dracula. They're coming to this castle that's owned by this Count Orlok, who is the Nosferatu, which is a vampire, right? And so he's strange looking. He's very pale. His fingers are elongated. It's when you first see him on the shore, the people are looking at him like this guy, there's something strange about him. And so there's that sense of dread and build, much like the beginning of the song, and then it turns into the tale, right? And so that's, I think they captured that in a way, like the storytelling there, and that's another like layered part of why I like it.
Oh, and yeah, I agree with that. That's just there's definitely a storytelling vibe on a lot of this, especially
Hmm.
this song. Another thing, another vibe that I got off of specifically this song and in the vocals. Picture in your mind Bruce Dickinson with Chris Jericho's voice.
Okay.
So for those of you who do or don't know, Chris Jericho, the wrestler, he's got a band named Fozzy. He's a singer. That's the kind of sound that I felt like this it's particularly on this song where the vocalist kind of had that Bruce Dickinson operatic style with Chris Jericho's tone.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I can see it. Yeah.
it was a little interesting for me, um, but and I also like how they layered the vocals on this on as the verse went on. It's pretty cool. I mean, very very good song. They did a lot of really good things with this song, and it was written very well. So, um, one definitely one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Okay. Glad to hear it.
All right, so Metal Monster, the fourth song on the album. So this, I don't know, dude. You're gonna have to answer this for me, but that's a different singer. I'm sorry, that is not Urban Breed. Like, I don't know who Urban Breed is.
Uh huh.
That's not him. That's not him.
No, that's
Because,
that's him.
but, well, you know what? Then that song was recorded in a different studio at a different time in a different age because it's just something about that vocal, and it happens twice on the album, but the second time is not as drastic.
So,
This one is really drastic in comparison to the vocals on the rest of the album.
and I'll tell you why. And when you go back and listen to it, you'll hear it. Um, there is a technique that singers use where I don't remember who I was listening to that was talking about this. Um, you get different performances from a singer when you push them just to the top and just a bit over the top of their register. And so if you listen to songs like Behind the Moon and Nosferatu specifically, um, you can hear there's a little bit of strain in the voice. Not enough to be harmful, but there's that strain there that you can hear him at the top, very top of the register of how like his voice will allow him to go. Whereas you listen to Metal Monster, it's very low pitched. I feel like and in fact I have something open where I can check this. Urban Breed came into the band after they had already started writing songs for the album. And so he only has a songwriting credit on a couple of the tracks. And that would be 1, 4, and 6. And so 4 is one of them. So if you listen to this song and you go back to listen to his old band, which was Tad Morose, which I brought up on a previous episode, he sings more in that register, um, like of this song on those albums, and that's why I know for sure it's him. But he's straining a bit more in the other songs, and
Well,
so therefore it sounds different.
and I can understand the part you're telling me about the straining because that is like if you think about Hammerfall or specifically in my case that in my thought process Halloween.
Uh huh.
That first album was Keep It to Seven Keys. I keep saying the first album. I think that's if I'm
The
not
first
mistaken,
album with Michael Kiske.
I think that's their first full length album because I think Walls of
No,
Jericho. No, it was Judas was an EP. Walls of Jericho was a full album, right?
yes,
Something like that. Okay.
Walls of Jericho's first album, but it's a different singer.
Okay. So with Keeper of the Seven Keys, you could hear that push on to get to the upper register. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So this has a very similar, but to me that was the power metal sound,
Mm-hmm.
right?
But
Um
Metal Monster's very in the middle of his. natural register. And so you don't hear that strain there. It sounds a little more nasally.
Yeah, and it just and then just the way he's enunciating words. I'm like, he's got this little, for lack of a better term, a twang at the end of his sentences, at
Mm.
the end of the verses, and it's just like this is very different. I'm like if you listen to the whole, anybody who's going to go out there and listen to it, you're going to sit there and say you're going to agree with me. There's two songs, and you mentioned one of them, actually maybe three, but this one and another one, and the number six song, Desdemona Amelia, is not as bad.
Yeah.
So I didn't think of it. I didn't think of it as a different singer compared to the rest of it. I just thought he was doing something different with his voice. The Metal Monster is just significantly different to me. However, um, it's a cool chorus, big gang vocally type thing. Very catchy, sing along type chorus. This is a kind of song I could see the crowd getting into and singing along with them.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I think it's a little cheesy because anytime you put metal in the title of a song, it's always a little cheesy to me. There's a few words that you'll like if bands that put America in a song
Rob Halford.
or yeah, things like that. Like, um, there's always a little cheesiness to it. But that being said, it is a cool song. It is a little outlier when it comes to the tone, and it's like, it's a first album by a band. There's always that one song that's kind of weird on the rest of the album. But luckily it's not a bad one.
No. So my notes, so I go into song 5, Crucified.
Uh-huh.
My notes go, first vocalist is back. Because this song sounds like the first three,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So this song gives me an accept vibe. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting off of it. And it's got a very long, drawn out, wordy chorus. Again, similar to the one from, was it Into the Dark? I think it was.
Yeah.
So similar in that style, but again, not bad. Um, this is one song I think, if anything, this is the one song in the album where I feel that they decided to go into, and it's not true, but it was almost like jammy, where they played in excess to what the song is. Like the whole album, the songs are the main focus. I think this song with the guitar, with the solos that they have in it, is where they decided to spawn off a little bit and do a little bit of showing off in what they could do. And
Yeah,
I,
the transitions between different parts of the songs, like the bridge and everything like that, they all have that what you're talking about, where it's a little excess.
yeah,
Maybe that's a good word for it. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I get, this is the first song that I get the hint of that Scandinavian keyboard style, where it's kind of like harpsichordy sounding.
Mm,
That really plays out on this when the keyboards are playing with the guitar. So, and nothing wrong with that at all. It's that I just know it's a style that is all their own. It's a very, Scandinavian style of music in terms of the way that they write
yeah.
their songs. So, and do their solos. So it's really cool song. Nothing wrong with it. To me though, because it's got a long wordy chorus, the chorus kind of, the melody gets lost in it. Um, it's not, so it's definitely not one of my favorite tracks, but it's not a bad track.
Yeah, that's fair.
Number 6, Desdemona Amelia. You really got to learn how to say that correctly. It's a long name for one
I
word.
feel sorry for all the Desdemona Amelias out there.
I don't know how many there are out there,
All one
uh,
of them.
but I'll call you Day or Amelia or Mona Amelia, but Desdemona Amelia, that's a lot to say.
That's a lot.
Anyway, so what did I say here? Song starts as a typical power metal song. And then it hits like a breakdown where, the drums and it's got this stop start guitar riff, and then the drums and bass are getting into that classic breakdown style, going back and forth with the guitar riff that keeps starting and stopping. Um, and this is where I began to really understand a little bit about the production of this album because of the way the bass sounds. Bass on this just sounds like you're hearing strings being hit, but you don't feel the bottom end. Um, like a lot of these guys play with a pick, and you can hear that picking, but it's very flat sounding in terms of the bass. You hear bass drum, but I think the bass guitar, just because of this kind of style of mixing, and it's very compressed. That's where you lose the a little bit of that bass guitar sound. But that's a struggle for a lot of different styles of metal music, where they're trying to fill that middle section with
Yeah,
certain
I think
sounds.
I think you're right there where like the bass I think is like you hear the guitars really well, you hear the drums really well, you hear the vocals, but the bass does get a little drowned out.
Yeah, I mean it's just natural in a lot of in a lot of metal. Um, what I like about this though, it's got a very in your face vocals, like the mix of it. They push the vocals to the front, which I really really like. You miss that. You don't realize how far away we've gotten from that style of mixing where you can get a vocalist right in your face. There's so much where they're just kind of like in the background, even with the guitars, that it's kind of like you don't realize how when you until you hear a song that comes out in your face like that, you're like, oh wow, okay, I get it, I like it. And that happens on this song, and I like that a lot. This chorus is really awesome. It's got a great melody, and it's got a really nice double guitar harmonies at the beginning of the solo. Again, like I said, this dude Tomas did a lot of work with the guitars
Yeah.
on this album. I mean, he's basically pulling double duties because it sounds like a dual guitar attack. I just put it that way. So
I kind of had a feeling you'd like this track. Funny enough though, it's actually my least favorite track on the album.
come on.
That's really all I gotta say. I mean, it's a good song. It's fine, but it's the catchiest song on the album.
I like a good hook. I've
You
always
do.
said that. So, moving on to number 7, Fallen from Grace. A little bit of a marching band intro. This to me is a very Halloween inspired type of track. It's got very emphatic uh, verses. They're pronouncing all the words, and it's very 1 to 2 syllable words throughout this whole thing. It's very staccato style of enunciating the words to the verses. Simple wording and phrasing, and it includes the chorus too. It does that in the chorus as well. This is probably my least favorite track on the album.
Okay. I like this one, but I get that. Like, but this is the probably the most typical power metal track on the album, and that would kind of go right in line. So
And yeah, and because like you hear it, and if you listened to
it's
Halloween before, you can pick that up.
yeah, it's very basic. It's not one that I would say breaks any new ground. But if you like power metal, then you'll probably like it because it's one of those like you can put your hand in the air and a fist and just like yeah, like
All
like
right, so
you're on the back of a a horse going to war and the king's in front of you and in his helmet and it feels like one of those kind of things, like
I can see that.
yeah.
So song number 8, Screams in the Night. So this is the way I describe this. A hi-hat builds to a single note melody that builds into a chugging riff that builds into the verse. It's just this is how that song progresses, and it's pretty cool. Um, it's got a really nice gallop with the harmony guitar lick. So it's again going into that little maiden style with the gallop. Which again, nothing wrong with that because we love Iron Maiden. But you know what's funny about that? Now that we mentioned that, everyone talks about the Iron Maiden gallop. Go back and listen to Iron Maiden and tell me how many songs have a gallop on it.
You mean like the first album?
Not just in general, right? Everyone talks about this gallop, like the Trooper has the gallop, right? Um,
Because it's a bass gallop with Iron Maiden, so it's different. It's like a lot of the bands that are their contemporaries gallop with the guitar as well, and that's the biggest difference. Where an Iron Maiden gallop, like yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of songs that have a straight up gallop in the same way like this here,
mhm.
but you listen to Iron Maiden, it's a bass gallop most of the time, which is
Yeah,
different. Yeah.
but it's like for instance, when you hear what I've always thought about Iron Maiden and the uniqueness was the style of his bass playing, but it wasn't always gallop. Like if you listen to Killers, right? Killers has a really it's a weird kind of way to say it's a gallop, but there's other songs like was it the what's on Seventh Son? Uh it's is it the Clairvoyant, I think. Yeah, it has that little bass intro. It's very similar to something that's
Yeah.
off of Killers. Killers has what Innocent Exile. I can't. Is it Innocent Exile or it has a really heavy bass thing on the front? But there's a couple of them. Like Wrathchild has it, but that's a gallop,
Hmm.
right? The Trooper is a gallop, right? But like there's some songs like when you start thinking about the whole entirety of Maiden's catalog, like not every song's a gallop,
No,
but
but
that's
it
what they're
is kind
known
of
for,
synonymous with them for good reason.
right? And these things like the whole that gallop, that's just synonymous with metal in
Yeah.
general, right? But when you start doing it and you hear it with the chorus and you say okay, yeah, and people will assimilate that immediately with Iron Maiden, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
just funny. Anyhow, did you have anything to say about Screams in the Night?
Yeah, I mean it's a really cool song, but it's kind of in the same vein as Fallen from Grace.
Okay, I got you there. All right, so song number 9, For the King. So this is one of those where um if you slow down a power metal song, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a mid-tempo power metal song. It's very very, very plotting double bass drum sound on a mid-tempo song. Again, very similar. Like you slow down Overkill from Motorhead. Instead of the you get the it's slow like
Hmm.
it's not slow like a ballad, but it's definitely slower. Got a very majestic sounding chorus. So that for it because it's they're talking about kings and queens and stuff like that. You got to be majestic. So it's definitely in that vibe.
It's kind of like there's moments if you listen to like classical music, Beethoven um plays some somewhat staccato style playing where it's like bum 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 bum, like that, and that has this in here, so it does have some elegance to it in that way. So I think you're spot on with what you said there.
All righty, thank you very much. All right, song number 10, Midnight Sun. Um, this gave me an Aces High kind of vibe. For some reason, there's just something about the how Aces High starts off. What was it? Dun, 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 dun. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
the opening is very Ace
Yeah,
Society,
so
yes.
it's got a similarity, not a rip off, but a similarity. Um, this song though, nothing really stood out to me about this song other than the Aces High thing until you got to guitar solo, which was very Yngwie Malmsteen inspired to me. A lot of notes, a lot of very fluidity kind of sounding guitar work, which is very good stuff. But the song itself was just kind of rather okay.
Yeah, it's towards the end of the album, and you know it's not one of the best, but it does have that really cool neoclassical solo.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
So the final song, On the Battlefield, has a very quiet, Iron Maiden esque intro that goes into a full blown power metal song and then ends the same way it started with that very quiet passage. Um, Again, it's typical power metal where you're talking about fighting for your honor on the battlefield and stuff like that, as noticed by the title is called On the Battlefield. So can't mistake that one, can you?
I thought
Um,
it was about sales.
so what do you have to say about this one?
I mean, I think it's a cool closer, and yeah, it ties in. The beginning kind of ties in to the sound. If you go back to Behind the Moon, that early part of the album, some similarity there. And then even like the bells ringing at the beginning of Nosferatu, like there's it feels kind of like that same thing. So it's a good way to tie everything together musically. And I think it's a pretty solid closer.
Yeah, it's not a bad song. So my final thoughts on this is that this is a very good power metal album, very anthemic, as well as what I look at is like I mentioned it earlier. There's songs not there's it's not bloated. There's a couple of songs that are 6 minutes, but for the most part, they're 4 to 5 to 6 minutes in length. They're short and precise. They're nothing that's dragged out. There's not a lot of gratuitous anything on this album, which is good because especially for a band that is while I guess Urban Breed was well known and Tomasa, these guys are not worldwide known in terms of they weren't known that well in America as far as they weren't Metallica, that kind of thing, but
Mm.
they have their fans. So um it was nice to see that they didn't go in a direction of let me show you what I can do on in this 10-minute guitar solo type of thing. That it was very good that they kept the focus on the vocals and the
Tasteful.
song. Say what?
It's tasteful.
Yes. Um, so last but not least, in my thought on this, there's themes of darkness, death, evil, and war. It's an interesting dichotomy to me between the dark subject matter that's coupled with the very upbeat sounding music that accompanies it. It's really weird to me that you have this power metal band that's playing for lack of a better term. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's some songs that are written in minor keys, but you could tell that there's some stuff in major keys, and yet they're singing about death and darkness and doom and gloom and all that stuff. And then you get the last few or a couple of spread out through the album about the typical power metal fight on the battlefield kind of for your honor thing. you know
Hmm.
um that's what I'm more used to with when it comes to power metal. I'm used to that fantasy based style or the Middle Ages battling style of
Yeah, like
songs.
Blind Guardian. Yeah.
Right. Or isn't Sabaton like that too? um
Oh yeah, yeah.
so that's what I'm kind of used to. And then to see Nosferatu, and they got this dark subject of evil and a Dracula and this, and it almost like the song Nosferatu is such a good song, but it's not like a dark and doomy song, but the words and the subject matter make it that way, you know. And so, um, good album, great debut. Somewhat a little bit confusing because like very similar to the way my wife says it. When she looks at Iron Maiden and sees those album covers, she's expecting something, I guess, more evil, something more along the lines of like a heavier, like a Slipknot, heavy metal kind of style, or
Yeah.
even death metal. And then you get run to the hills. It's like, uh, so there is, and Iron Maiden has had that same kind of interesting dichotomy between their album covers and their subject matter and their actual playing. So this is along those lines. I think this was excellent. I think this was a great album. Thank you for showing it to me.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, man. Yeah, it's one of those things where like I know it's good. It's hard to make the time, sometimes to just go listen to a new album because there's so much going on in life, especially as you get older. When you're younger, like it's like I don't know, it's easier to just sit down and try something new. Um, but yeah, like I'm glad you enjoyed it. As my personal analysis of the album, I would say, it's mostly focused, but I would say you were right in saying that there is a weird dichotomy where there is like the songs that are kind of about darkness, and then there's other ones about glory, and then there's other ones that are a little more um, basic, like you've got a song like Nosferatu compared to a song like Metal Monster compared to a song like For the King. Those all feel very different. So it is a little disjointed, but then again, it's also that happens with first albums, you know. You've got different ideas from different players, especially when they come in at different stages, like maybe they weren't a member of the band and then they come in and they bring in some stuff that they had from before. Um it's not always uh, Appetite for Destruction, where it just works out that everything works, so well together. So I don't think it's a bad thing that there is that kind of variety there, but also, um, I think they get their sound started here, but they develop it further from there. But I love this album. I think it's great.
Awesome. Awesome. So I brought you or told you to listen to Lizzie Borden, Love You to Pieces, which is their debut full length album. They had released an EP the year before called Give 'Em the Axe. This was on Metal Blade Records, released in 1985. So give me your thoughts.
Um, so I'm not super familiar with Lizzie Borden. I did watch some time ago, uh, Metal School's video on Lizzie Borden. What I learned is I obviously didn't pay very good attention. um, that could have been any number of things. I love Metal School. Check out his channel on YouTube. It is really cool information. Um, but Lizzie Borden was a band I'm not super familiar with. For some reason or another, they've escaped me. I did not necessarily recognize pretty much anything I heard when I listened to this. So I'm going to check out a song you mentioned today. You said was kind of their biggest track that people might know. So I will kind of investigate a little bit further. But this was very fresh for me as far as like I'm not familiar. Um, what I did, I learned a little bit about the band as a whole, some of the theatrics and that kind of stuff. It's interesting, coming out in 1985 when it did. There's some interesting influences that I guess I'll talk about a bit while I go over this, but yeah, I'll just get straight into it, I guess. Um, the album starts off with this song, Council for the Cauldron. And it's a really fast paced, like cool opener. It was not what I expected at all. I was expecting more like, I guess, glammy kind of stuff. This was very like gallopy and fast and kind of maiden like. Um, I really liked the harmony guitar solos, which were very like, I would say somewhere between Judas Priest. I would put it more in the category of Judas Priest than I would in Maiden harmonies. There was more of a feeling of the way that Judas Priest kind of goes about that, but the gallop and that kind of stuff, that the pacing, and I felt like, okay, this is kind of maideny. And then also what really kind of hit me was I heard this rhythm in there that I was like, man, that sounds really familiar. And then it kind of dawned on me there is a very strong similarity. Then I think it's a reference if from Children of Decadence from Children of Bottom that was on the third album and Follow the Reaper, and I wonder if Alexi was a fan because there is this really like interesting reference there. But I thought it was a cool opener. I find it kind of hard to understand some of the vocals because of the way the production is done. And I'll talk more about that as we go on. But initially, my thoughts were it's not the best production, but the song itself is really cool.
I agree with you on the production. This is more when you think about 1985 and being on Metal Blade Records. This was very. I don't want to call it demo esque, but it's low budget. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, Very much like how Slayer's first album is low budget. It's not a demo, but it's low budget, so that you have limited time to get all the precise sounds you want. That is definitely the case here. So I can understand that. I like Council for the Cauldron. So it's a pretty cool intro or opener, is like you say.
Question for you, because
Yeah.
I couldn't find the answer to this. He says something at the beginning of the song that sounds like it's playing in reverse. Do you know what that is?
Um, I did at one point, and I don't. Let me see if it says anything about it. Um, in um, in the in Spotify. Nope, it does not. So I don't know. I know what you're talking about because it right in the beginning there it goes.
Hmm.
I don't know if it may be saying their own name. I don't know. I gotta find out
I
what
don't
you're
know
talking about.
if somebody out there knows the answer to it, like message us on Instagram or something, because like I don't know. um, well, track two is called Psychopath. Again, it has kind of a Iron Maiden vibe at the beginning, but it also has this really kind of interesting disco-ish rhythm, but like a little offbeat. So it has this how do you say it? Like it has this dissonance that almost feels like something that could have been um I don't know the best way to say this. It's like it makes you a little uncomfortable, but in a good way. Like
Oh
you know,
yeah, I get what you're saying. You're talking about so yeah. I mean, it totally applies to this song.
yeah, and I mean the song's called Psychopath, right? So one thing about them is there's a bit of theatrics involved, and you get that feeling through the music here. So it's an interesting follow up because the first song is a little more straightforward, and this one kind of plays around a bit more. Which the ending, he's saying in this kind of whiny esque voice, I want to play a," and it reminds me of the movie The Warriors, which I'm wondering if there was a direct reference to that because there's a lot of like horror references that I'm gathering as I'm listening along, and it being more theatrical, I would imagine there's probably some references to film, which one song specifically definitely
Yes,
references film. Yeah.
I like Psychopath. I really like this whole album. Um, this is one of those albums that I discovered as a kid. Growing up at that time period, there was so much discovery because heavy metal was basically in its infancy in terms of really in the 80s scene. Um, you had, and this is probably toddler age when you think about it like that. Motley Crue in 1982. Um, you've got Quiet Riot in 1983. You know, but there's that LA scene is spawning so many bands because they're all doing it. It's a total DIY type of thing, very similar to the punk scene. It was very DIY. Rat released their own EP. Motley Crue released their album, "Too Fast for Love," independently at first. Um, so you have a lot of these bands that's trying to do it themselves, and then Lizzie Borden. So that whole period of discovery for me was super cool. So that's one of these things where like this album may not have the best songs. Like someone's going to sit there and say, "What the hell? That's album shit." But it's when you think about the time period and what you're comparing it to, it's it's very it's very different in that regard. So there wasn't a lot like this out there. Metallica had just started a couple years earlier. The whole thrash Bay Area thrash scenes only started a few years earlier than this, so it was so much newness in terms of what was coming out of California. It was crazy, you know.
Yeah, no, it's hard to say because it's not specifically like groundbreaking in any way, but it takes a lot of different things and does, combines them in a good way. Um, yeah, I like how it's a bit heavier in sound than a lot of the bands that were, I guess, more of their ilk than say somebody that was like in thrash metal. Like I'd still put this more in the glam end of things. Um, I guess the closest thing that I could compare it to is maybe like Crimson Glory or something like that, where um, it's the heavier end of glam.
Yeah, I mean, they were in the glam scene, but remember, like Motley Crue didn't want to be glam. They weren't really glam. They were just dangerous. I mean, to me, quite honestly, if you shout at the devil it's lumped into glam, but when you think about at the time period that it came out, it was pretty freaking heavy. You know,
Hmm.
it wasn't speed metal, but it was pretty heavy. Um, Wasp comes out in the same similar time period, and it's like this is similar in that style. There's nothing glammy about Wasp until a couple of albums later. So I get what you're saying. It's definitely it's not speed metal, it's not thrash, but it's not like Rat. You
Yeah,
know,
but it takes some of the ideas from things like thrash or speed metal in some, not speed metal really, but like um some of those similar ideas
yeah,
and
absolutely,
inserts them into this, which is cool.
yes, absolutely.
So that takes us to track three, which is Save Me. So this one I really liked, but I think part of that was it reminds me of like a Jakey Lee era Ozzy song. Like I almost feel like this song could have been written for Ozzy. I mean, not that it actually was, but like in another timeline, you know, like this could fit on an Ozzy album. Honestly, um, it feels like I don't know. I wrote some of this in speech to text, and yeah, I'm just looking at my notes and it says feels like an attempt at wedding Ozzy. I don't know. I don't know what that means.
I think you're supposed to say writing Ozzy.
Yeah, I that's what I'm thinking it was supposed to say, but apparently it's wedding Ozzy. Um, one thing is interesting about it is it's like not really guitar harmonies. It's the first track on there that doesn't have that. But there are some vocal harmonies that are created by the backing vocals, which I like. So it still kind of ties into the same vibe, just a different approach to it on this track. So it keeps it interesting and a little different.
Yeah, this has got a good hook to it. I like the hook in the chorus. Um, It's one of those songs where it's very catchy when he gets to that chorus part. So that's what makes it attractive to me, I guess you could say. Um, so, but the main part of the song, I mean, I get where you're coming from with the Ozzy thing. I could see that. I can almost see because of Ozzy's pitch and how he sings. I can see Ozzy doing the chorus. So yeah,
Mhm.
I kind of agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so track 4 is Red Rum. That's the one that I mentioned is definitely a film reference. Red Rum was from The Shining, and if you looked at it in the mirror backwards, it was murder. Um, so this is like a really quick pace song. What I like about it is how much the bass line stands out. It's kind of like this walking bass that goes along with the gallop. It's very pronounced, and it's probably the most interesting part of the song to me. Um, I love the reference to The Shining. Love just Stephen King stuff in general. So that's a cool, nice little reference there. The Like I said, the bass stands out. But one thing I didn't like was that the guitars kind of feel a bit low in the mix. But that's just part of the production. Um, I think this song has possibly the best solo on the album.
Hmm. I don't remember the solo that well. I did listen to the album a couple times on the way home, but I wasn't. I was listening to it just to kind of remember the songs because it's been a while. But I like the song. Just the chorus is pretty cool. You know, it's also got the gang vocal style chorus when they repeat the title. So it's definitely a song about The Shining. So it's really once Lizzie's reputation began to come out there, then this all makes sense, especially when you see the live album that comes out after this. So very similar to how Bloodbound, the next bunch of albums kind of established themselves a little bit more in that scene in terms of their sound and stuff like that. This is very similar. Like you realize this is the beginning of some really intense craziness from Lizzie Borden.
Yeah, it feels very um I don't want to say elementary. Um it feels like there's ideas, but the execution maybe isn't quite there yet. I'm very interested to hear more as I go along. Um and maybe that's a harsh thing to say, I guess. It's the first album. It's gonna feel a little bit elementary compared to stuff that follows. So I have not listened to more of the band yet. I mean, in the last couple days, I was focused on this particular album. So um, I'm interested to see where things go. But yeah, I get it. Totally would get what you're saying. Um, all right, so the next track is "Love You to Pieces." This is the side closer. If you are, listening on the vinyl, I would say the vocals are probably the clearest here. It's a little bit more of the focus in the mix, and everything's a little more pronounced. It's forward and clear, which is a lot different than the four songs that came before it, where it's a little bit harder to hear Lizzie's vocals in those tracks, but this one it's like right there. And there is one part at the beginning where he does this like voice for just like the beginning of a word that almost sounds like he's like Cookie Monster for a second, which kind of cracked me up. And there is one part of this song that really threw me off. There's two tracks on the album that I mistook the lyrics on, and this one he says through the eyes and through your eyes, and I kept hearing like through the ass. And so I was like, I had to look up the lyrics because I was like, what? So what I would say is very different about this particular track is that it's really like 100% carried by the vocal melody. The song itself, like if you were playing it in like a karaoke um track to, sing along to it. This is a vocal song. There's not much to the actual music. It's different. It's not my cup of tea per se, but apparently it appeals to people.
So so considering, see, what this came out in 1985, right?
Mhm.
Um, it was right around the same time that Home Sweet Home was hitting um, its stride for Motley Crue, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. So this is their version of a ballad. The thing about uh, Lizzie Borden that I discovered, and it's, you know how there's a certain attitude, I guess you wouldn't say, about Dee Snider and Twisted Sister.
Yes.
Okay, there's a similarity in that regards with Lizzie Borden. Um, Not in anything other than when he's singing by himself, it's not the, like this, it's not the best thing. He has a good voice, he can hit different notes and stuff like that. And but like it's I don't know, it's hard to say, like it isn't the best song for singing or for showing off your vocal talents in terms of the musicality of it.
Yeah.
But he has the vocal talent to do it. Like he can pull it off. It's not like he's a rough singer that has to hide behind music.
Well,
Um,
and no, it's quite the opposite. Like I
right,
said, like the whole song is carried by his vocals. There's nothing much to the actual instrumentation. Like it
right.
is very, very basic. If you are not a good singer, then you probably
Yeah,
can't even touch this song.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and but there's at the same time, there's also, it's almost like he's just on stage talking to like one person in the audience, and but at the same time he's like singing while he's talking to that person in the audience.
Yeah.
That's how basic the music is behind this. Um, and because of the production, it doesn't have that depth to the vocals that you would hear, on something that's better produced.
I'm interested. Is there maybe a live version of this to
Yes,
compare that? Okay. I'd like to hear that.
there is a live version, but I think that it falls into the same problematic category
Okay.
because it's in a club.
Mm, okay.
So
Well, I'll
you
see
don't.
what I can find. Maybe it's on something newer, or I don't
Um,
know.
Although, I mean, I haven't checked haven't seen the video. That they do have a video on that Thunderflix that I told you about,
Okay.
where they they're playing live at Grass Pop, but it's much later. I mean, this is like 2018, 2020, something like that.
Hmm.
Whenever that show came out, and so I don't know if they play "Love You to Pieces" on there.
We don't have a sponsorship deal with Thunderflix, but we'd be happy to. So,
I tell you what, I was super like stoked to find that because Brian Slagle, I was listening to um the his podcast about the 100 songs of that define heavy metal, and he was talking about it. Actually, it was the producer, I think it was Jay Rustin in this particular one, that was talking about um Metal Blade and talking about all the stuff, and then that he said, yeah, I saw something on Thunderflix, and I'm like, what? And he's talking about the whole documentary on Metal Massacre. I'm like, I got to check out this Thunderflix thing. So yes, Thunderflix. If you love us, we love you.
yeah, this is your last free advertisement, Thunderflix. You you know what to do.
Yeah, I gotta pay my $6.99. I may have to cancel.
Yeah, right. All right, so this takes us to the second half of the album. This is American Metal. And if you remember what I said earlier, there's a few things that I find cheesy as using metal in the name of a song and American in the name of a song. And this got
He
both of
combines in both.
them. So uh you know what I realize here is what highlight it kind of highlights how I feel about like the whole album is there's like some really cool stuff that I'm like, wow, I like this a lot. There's like little parts where I go, damn, this is cool. And then there's like some boring riff. And then it gets back, like it just pops back into something more awesome. And so it's like, and boring is maybe too harsh to say, but it's just like, I don't know, when you have this like really kick-ass riff and then it just like goes dun 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 dun, dun, like you're like, yeah, it kind of lost it. And I think part of that is the production. Um, because like when it's heavy, it really rocks, and then like the next kind of thing that happens, you go like, man, I wish it was better production on there. But yeah, I mean, for what it is, it's a cool side opener, but it didn't stand out to me in the way that like the stuff on the first half did.
Interesting because so yes, this is their anthem. I was just reading about how because he I was just reading some things he wrote in the greatest hits album, and this song is obviously one of their greatest hits. And he was talking about how he wrote specifically wanted to write an anthem, and he specifically wanted to write an anthem about the music that was so inspiring to him. This whole
Mm,
scene that was coming out of LA. And at the same time, there's this pride in America at the time, um, with wanting trying to end the Cold War and all that stuff that was happening in the mid '80s. It
yeah,
didn't happen for a few years, but there was this sense of pride. Like I think it was you had the 1980 Olympics with the hockey team, the '84 Olympics, I believe. Was that the one that uh, I don't know if it was the '84 Olympics or we banned it, or if it was the '84 Winter Olympics. I can't remember, but something happened. There's just a lot of when Olympics come around. There's a lot of pride in your country that pops up. So that's what he want. He's trying to aim at. American metal. That was what this scene was. They have the new wave of British heavy metal that came out in the early '80s. This was the next extension to that, and it was Americanized. So
yeah.
this is the song that got me into Lizzie Borden.
Okay.
I would listen
Um,
to this song up and down the block on my boombox, and I was just cranking the shit out of it. That and Keel's "The Right to Rock," so I was double cheese right there. You've got American metal and the right to rock. So
I mean, yeah, I like cheese can be good. Like obviously not like cheese, but like cheesy music. Um, and there's nothing wrong with the track whatsoever. It's not like United We Stand,
oh my god, that
United. Oh
song's
my
so
god.
bad.
Um,
I love you, Judas Priest. I love you.
not that song though. But like it's a cool, like I said, it's a cool song. And maybe I have to give it a few more listens where, it'll sink in a bit differently. Um, but like, I don't know, it didn't rock my socks off. So,
Maybe Keel can rock your socks off with "Right to Rock."
yeah. All right, so that takes us into Flesh Eater. There's another like it's got really cool harmonies, cool solo. I think the main riff is a little boring. It's got some Maiden like stuff on there, but this is like the most Rob Halford esque vocals on the album too. I think so. Like it's a mixed bag, but I like it a lot. I thought it was a cool song.
Really? Okay. That's I like how you compare it to Rob's, and the first thing I started thinking about was like Judas Priest and Grinder, because this is Flesh Eater.
Yeah, yeah.
um, this is an interesting song for me. It's it's not. Oh, it's well, I guess it's over the top in subject matter.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess it goes along with the whole horror component, like of The Shining and stuff like that. I mean, again, you begin to realize what Lizzie Borden's about as time goes on. Um, so this is an interesting one. It's got it. I mean, it's for being relatively slow. It's still got a good hook to it. Um, but yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah, it's towards the end of the album. It's where they usually put songs like this one.
But it's getting
Um,
better actually after this.
yeah, because Warfare is cool. I really like that one. Um, so yeah, Warfare is the next track. Um, even like, I would say there's definitely some Maiden inspiration for this band because like the vibrato, the little bit of a growl that Bruce does at the end of some phrasing, um it's here. Like this is a really cool song, and I really enjoyed the drum beat, especially like it's probably the most unique drums that are on there. Like you know how with you mentioned Motley Crue a few times tonight. Um, there are some things that Tommy does when he plays that he utilizes different parts of the drum kit to create a sound.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's going on here, and I thought it was just really cool. So probably my favorite song on the album.
Oh, okay, cool. I like that. I think it's a great song. And Joey Scott Hargis, the drummer, is very good. He's a really, really good drummer, and his only gig is very similar to Alex Van Halen. His only gig has been in Lizzie Borden.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you know why?
Is he
Because
related?
Lizzie's his brother.
Ah, so he's Alex Van Borden.
Lizzie, or he's Joey Van Halen.
uh,
Yes.
so,
So yeah, he's his brother.
so, all right. So, what did you think of Warfare, by the way?
Warfare's a great song, dude. It's it's a catchy. It's a one word. Well, it's a two syllable one word title and one word chorus. You know, it's warfare. They repeat it, warfare. You know, type of thing. It's a pretty cool song.
Yeah. All
It's
right. So
upbeat
the
for sure. It's upbeat.
all right. So that takes us to Godiva, which is kind of again like a little bit of a gallopy maiden sound, but also this is a very priest-like solo, and I like that dichotomy, like where um those are two bands that I absolutely love, and if those are the references, which I tend to think they are, like you couldn't have better early metal inspiration than those two bands. And I like hearing the kind of more Judas Priest esque solos with the Maiden style music because it is very like different in that way. Um, Now, that being said, while I was listening in the car, I thought this song was called Godzilla. And I was like, and because again, the production isn't the best, and it almost sounds like he's yelling Godzilla, and I was like, that's awesome because I love Godzilla. And then I looked, I looked at the screen on my car, and oh, Godiva. Oh, okay, well that's fine too. Um, but I was a little disappointed by that. But those are the two songs that I misunderstood. The one about being in somebody's ass or something, and then and then Godzilla. So
So I think the biggest issue. I don't even know if it's so much the production or the way he enunciates. Because I'm used to the production, right? And I still
yeah,
can't understand what he says because I think a lot of it has to do with how he enunciates his words and it kind of just like
it's not just
scrambles over.
that. It sounds like they put him in the middle of a hallway to sing, and maybe that's intentional, but it makes it really hard because it's very echoey, a lot of reverb. It's hard to specifically hear what he's saying.
Yes, exactly, and it is the reverb that does it.
Yeah.
So
Of course, I didn't think they actually recorded him in a hallway, but like, that's how it feels, and I don't know if it was the right call. It certainly gives it a unique sound for at the time. In hindsight, maybe not the best way of doing it, or maybe that was the only option, and that's just the technology that they had available. Um, it doesn't really take away anything from the album, and especially like when back then, think about it this way: you would have been opening up a vinyl, reading all the insert with all the lyrics and the pictures and all that stuff. So it's a different experience too. Like the first time that I picked up a death metal album, it's not like I just understood all the words the first time. Like it took me a little bit. I mean, some of that shit I just learned this year when I was reviewing something, and I've been listening to those albums for 25 years. So, I'm not, that is not a real criticism. It's just my initial gut reaction to it. So, take it as you will. I don't think it's always necessary to perfectly hear the lyrics. It's just an analysis, right?
no, I totally get what you're saying, and the one thing that there's a big difference between big budget albums and for what it's worth, a DIY kind of uh first album on an independent label.
Yeah.
Metal Blade, like it's very rare. Think about um Metallica, the first album wasn't it produced by that Paul Curcio guy? Um, Whereas after that, they literally produced themselves after that.
Hmm.
So, yes, the producer Paul Curcio on the first album, they didn't have complete control because they were figured, oh, let someone else, let somebody produce us, right? Ever since ever since then, it's basically been James and Lars all the way through until now. It's always the producer with Hetfield Ulrich, right? And so Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, Justice for All, produced by Metallica, produced by Metallica with Fleming Rasmussen. So same thing here. Slayer's first two albums, produced by Slayer with Brian Slagle. He was just the guy that was basically hanging out in the studio with them, giving them ideas. But they were basically self-producing. Lizzie Borden self-produced, but you could tell these albums are kind of like low budget. That's just the bottom line.
Hmm.
So these guys, you get caught up in the times. You're like, oh man, my voice sounds so cool when I have all that reverb and echo. And it echoes, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it's really cool. And then you put it on an album, you're like, whoa, that doesn't sound that good.
Yeah.
But they still think it sounds good and they let it go, and then you realize, holy shit, I shouldn't have been doing that. you know?
I don't, like I said, I don't necessarily think it sounds bad. It's just not clear, right? And so, being somebody that can listen to music from all over the world, like we've talked about, I've listened to like Japanese metal and stuff like that, and so I don't know the lyrics always, or I might know the lyrics, but I don't know what they mean. Um, so I don't think that's always necessary, but it's just, again, it's just something to think about. And obviously, this is the first time I'm listening to this album too.
Right.
Um, all right, so the final track on the album is "Rod of Iron," and I think it's a really like solid opening to the song. I haven't seen the way it's played, but I feel like he's using like a slide for this kind of cool effect that's there right at the beginning. And then like one thing that's really interesting about it, I was listening to it on my drive in this morning, and I felt like the vocals on this track were very bipolar because like the opening to the song is very quiet and kind of slow, but the vocals are back and forth between kind of quiet and slow, and then the next little bit of it is he's screaming his head off, and it's all like set to the same kind of quiet background, and then the song takes off from there, and it gets a little a more energetic all the way through. And so, it plays it well into that kind of like theatrical senses, again. And I think the solo on this track is again one of the better ones. I think it between that and the one from Red Rum, I think those are my two favorite solos on the album.
Very cool. Um, the way I see this song, like what you're talking about with the vocals, I realize Lizzie Borden's is a very theatrical singer. He's got a lot of that. I'm putting on a show, and I'm not just singing, but I'm acting out these vocals. I'm acting out these words. In some cases, obviously, he's not really killing anybody, but if you look at the show, you'll see there's some pretty crazy shit that happens. Um, so uh, there is that element, and once someone, and obviously you didn't realize this going in. Once you realize it, then it kind of a lot of it makes sense because there is that theater component to these songs. So when you see that schizophrenia or that psychotic bipolar shit, it's pretty much him acting out parts, and
Mm,
so
okay.
so yeah, so you hit that pretty much spot on. He is a very different kind of singer in that regards. But yeah, Rod of Iron, it's pretty cool, catchy little song once it picks up, and so there you go. So your
So
thoughts?
so overall, I mean, I like the album. I think it's really interesting because I had heard the name, and like I said, I watched that metal school episode, which I think I need to watch again because I failed the lesson on that one. Um, but yeah, I think it's really cool. Like I obviously love Maiden. I love Judas Priest. So there's some elements of both in here. I wish the production was a little better, but it is what it is, and it is not harmful. I thought that, interestingly enough, the demos that are attached on the deluxe edition that I listened to, they actually sounded a lot better than what I would have thought, and the vocals are very clear. Um, in some ways, I felt like on the demos he's kind of going through the motions, but it's a demo, so sure. Um, that doesn't really have any bearing on the album itself. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. Like this is one that I have overlooked for pretty much my entire life. So, yeah, it's a new experience, and I'm definitely going to listen to their next album from here and try to get a better feel for the band.
Cool, cool. I'm glad I can bring you closer to what I've experienced in my youth.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like you think about the same thing with Armored Saint, the first EP they put out themselves on Metal Blade, and it got them signed. And then they got produced by Michael James Jackson, who had done Creatures of the Night, and then all of a sudden, Brian, who had picked Michael, had said when they got the mixes back, like he was in the studio and he heard them doing the tracking, and he said it sounded great. And then when he got the mixes back, it was like this is not what we were expecting.
Mm, interesting.
And because of the limited budget, even though they were on Chrysalis Records, they still have a limited budget. They weren't able to go back in and remix. They just didn't have the money. So there you have that. So it happens. Um, cool. So I really enjoyed this little experiment that we just did.
Yeah, me too. I think it'd be fun to do again, and I almost think like if the listeners want to make a suggestion, maybe after a couple times we do this, that'd be cool too. So like if you've got like any suggestions for us to listen to, um, yeah, we'll try that out too.
Very good. Very good. Now that we're close to the end of the episode, I wanted to bring one thing up, and I remembered that we had been talking about it on a couple episodes. We are finally getting to put together the t-shirts. I got some suggestions from a couple of fans. It's been great feedback. So I've come up with a price. It is going to be $25. It includes shipping to you within the continental United States. If you're outside of the continental United States, we'll do $25, and then I'll figure out the shipping, and I'll basically email you and text you, or not text you, email you, and let you know. So there you have it. It's going to be a two-sided shirt, big logo on the front with a nice little catchphrase on the back. So that's it's a pretty cool shirt. I think someone asked for a long sleeve, so long sleeve shirts will be $30.
Very cool.
All right. Well, we don't have a big four on this episode, but we're going to bring it back pretty soon. In the meantime, don't forget to click like or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to get our latest episode as soon as it drops. And while you're there, please leave us a comment, and maybe you can give us a rating too while you're at it.
And don't forget to interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and on X, or send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. YouTube viewers, click subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when we post a new show. And remember, tune into the next episode where we'll spark up another exciting metal debate. On behalf of Kenneth and myself, stay safe and always turn it up to 11.
See ya.